Oh, now what? Hey, thanks for dropping by. Can't Let Her Die DIY. If you found this channel, you found this video, you must have a Kubota zero turn. This is a 2010 ZD221. It's a great machine. 2010. I've had it for 4 or 5 years. Before that, it was used quite a bit in a commercial operation. It has 1,679 hours. That's a lot. It is working great. It does a great job mowing, change a few blades, general maintenance, nothing serious, but now we have an issue. At 1,679 hours, it's leaking transmission fluid. Now I have another video where I changed the transmission fluid and all the filters. You might want to check that out. The fluid is nice and clean. It looks good, but it is leaking. I thought it was leaking around the transmission plug, but it turns out it's leaking from another area above that. It's just misleading. It makes you think that you're leaking around the drain plug, but it's not. It's leaking above that, if yours is the same as mine. Since mine is so old and gets used so much, things are going to wear out on mine before they wear out on yours. So this video probably will help you out quite a bit, because you can see what's going to happen around 1,600 hours. Check it out. Let's find that leak. Where exactly is it leaking? Where is it? Let's get that thing fixed. Let's get this back into operation. I got to get going. I got things to do. Grass to mow. Let's do it. You got this. Where is this leak coming from? Let's take a look. Let's pop the hood open. And there's the engine. Let's push the seat ahead. There's a little lever down here. Pull the lever back, and the seat's quite heavy. Lift it up, and it locks in here so it doesn't come back on you. That's great. This is the transmission right here. That's how you fill the transmission. There's the dipstick to measure how much transmission fluid you have in it. And we are leaking transmission fluid. So to see down in here, we have to remove this plate. There's 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to pull this radiator screen off. You can do that now. Pull the radiator screen off. Now we can see part way down there. Now I'm removing the 14mm bolt. And it's pretty good. It's not too tight. And there's 4 of them. So we get that out of the way, and boom, look at that. Now we can see. Check this out. There's grass everywhere in here. I mean, I just cleaned this, and you mow a little bit, and it doesn't matter. It looks like you haven't cleaned this ever. So I had this was all caked in grass, and I removed it just so that I can see the where it was leaking. So that's what you have to do whenever there's a leak. It's to determine where that leak's coming from. You really have to get rid of all the grass. I did determine where it was leaking. These have a tendency to leak in 2 areas. This hose right here, going from the transmission, from the top of the transmission down to the bottom of the transmission, right in there, right underneath that joint right there, right here. There's an O-ring in there that fails, and that's my first leak was right there. Now this pipe goes all the way down here. It's held in place by this bolt right here. That kind of clamps it in place. That just holds it in to that position. And the pipe also goes in right here with this nut. Now, just to bring you up to speed, it was leaking in one area right here. It only leaks when I engage the mower. I can drive around, it doesn't leak. I can raise the mower deck, it's not leaking. But when I gauge the blades, start mowing grass, it starts leaking right under here. So that's a good thing. When you disengage the mower, it stops leaking. So the first thing we're going to do is remove this bolt that holds this tube on. We're going to remove this bolt down here as well, and that spins off. And then we're going to remove this bolt so that it gives us enough room to get this tube out. And we're going to see why it's leaking in there and down in there. Now this bolt here is a 14mm bolt, and it's going to be in our way. When we pull this tube out, it's going to hit this bolt, and that bolt has to be removed to give us space to remove that tube. How do I know this? Because I've done it once before, and I'll tell you all about it. But for now, let's get this bolt out of the way. Fastest hands in the internet. Okay, now we gotta remove this bolt here. It's a 14mm bolt, just like all the other ones. Thank you, Kubota. That bolt right there, it attaches this bracket that holds that pipe onto the transmission. So that's a bracket that holds that whole pipe in place into this joint. So that bolt has to come out. That bracket will slide this way, and I can remove that whole pipe. Now this is the bolt on the clamp that I just removed on the bracket that was holding that tube into the transmission. And I want to show you something. If you look at the threads here, you can see there's grit in between the threads. If you look right here, I get my fingernail in there, right there, there's particles in there. See that? That may be nothing. See that? It doesn't look like much in the video right now, but the first time when I did this, and I removed this for the first time, the threads were filled with threads. Like the threads are supposed to be on the transmission. This is a cast aluminum, I believe, which is light, but it's also metal that's very brittle. And even though I did nothing wrong, just over 10 years and a lot of heat, the threads, internal threads in this transmission are breaking down. Some of the threads came out with the bolt, which is very scary. So to get the last nut off, I'm going to have to access it from underneath. That's why I jacked this up. So we got to do the push test, make sure it's safe for me to crawl underneath of it. This is a heavy machine, and it's not easy to jack it and make it safe. But this is what I got. Now we do have some movement here, but the parking brake is applied. I get, right, the gear, it gives you that much movement, right? I can't push it forward, I can't push it backwards, I can't push it that way, pulling it. I can get wiggling, I can get movement, but I'm really pushing on it. It's safe, but you really should do the push test, make sure it's safe. You want it to fall off by pushing it rather than you being underneath of it when it falls off, cranking on a rusty nut. We're good to go, let's go. I'm going in. I got my goggles, because there's grass falling down at all times under there, and rust and that sort of stuff. I'm going in, cover me. Okay, I'm underneath the zero turn. You're looking straight down, I'm looking straight up. This is the bolt right here. That's the nut that we have to get off to take this tube off. So it's coming off with very little fight. And I know why, and I'll tell you. But it's easier to show you, so I'll show you once I get this off. So I have limited tools out here on this location, but that's good because many of the viewers watching this have limited tools as well. You know, we're not mechanics, we're not doing this, we're not professionals, we're not doing this full time. We're just fixing our own equipment, and many of us don't have all the tools yet, and we have to make do with what we have. So if you have a pair of channel links, you can get this done. And As you see, that's all I'm using. We'll speed this up. Okay, now there should be nothing holding that tube on. Okay, there. You can see I just pulled it a little bit, and now it's starting to hit down here. So with a little bit of force, I can slightly bend that and get that out on the top. There, the top's out. Now the bottom is out. And we're getting some transmission fluid that's inside. Now look, maybe this will show you even better. See that? See that? Right there? That is the internal threads that should be on the transmission. So some of the threads are breaking down in there. It's not holding this in tight. Like I mentioned earlier, when I first saw this leak, it was leaking from here, not from there. Right? It was leaking from this joint in the top, so that goes in like that. And when I pulled this off, I got this apart, I looked and this O-ring was damaged. And it was simply an O-ring. So I replaced the O-ring. That O-ring is brand new. And I put it in, reinstalled it. And I noticed when I had taken this off that there was threads in there. So I was really worried about that. So I screwed this in, and it didn't go super tight. It didn't go tight, so the threads are failing. And so when it was all done, I took it for a test mow, and it's not leaking from here. I fixed it with a simple O-ring. So that may be your problem on that one. It's just a simple O-ring. This, I snugged that bolt up, and it was okay. But this one here would not go very tight because the threads have been damaged. So I put a little bit of gasket maker right around here to give it some extra hold, and it worked for a while, but then it started to leak, and that's where I am now. So there's two options we can do here. We can get some tool and remake the threads in there. You can tap some new threads into the aluminum. That's a big job. I'm not going to go that way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up. There is some threads in there. It will thread in and it'll go half tight. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put J-B Weld on this because I've already tried it with gasket maker and it wasn't enough for a long-term fix. So this machine has 1,674 hours on it. I bought it. I bought it used. It was used in a commercial application. I'll never put that many hours on it. So at 1,600 or so hours, you may develop a leak on this tube. I'm going to put J-B Weld on it. The good news is it'll bind, and I'm sure that'll stop that from leaking. The bad news is I may not be able to get this off again, but I'm thinking I'm never going to put 1,674 hours on it. It's going to be a permanent fix. I may be able to get it off if you really come onto it, break the bonds of the J-B Weld, but I don't think I'll ever have to. I got a brand new O-ring on there. I have a new O-ring put on here. It's just some of the threads in the machine have deteriorated. They came off, so it will not go tight. The J-B Weld will make this tight. This will make this a nice tight seal, and my problem will be fixed permanently. And because the real issue here is you do not want to leak transmission fluid, go dry on transmission fluid, and do damage to your transmission. That's the real danger. I'm going to fix this, and I'm quite sure I'll never need to take this off again. It's aluminum, it's not rusting, it's in good shape, 10 years, it looks brand new. It's just the O-rings deteriorate after 10 years, that's all. New O-rings, I'll get another 10 years. That's it. And that's at a commercial rate. I'm not going to use it that much. Anyway, yapping way too much. Let's get to work. J-B Weld. Okay, I'm underneath the 0 turn, and that is the threads that I need to clean. If we're going to J-B weld this, we need to get all surfaces as clean as possible. It will bind better. So I'm sticking in absorbent towel, paper towel, spinning it, and trying to get it clean on the inside. Remove any residual transmission fluid in there. That's one. I'm going to do it again. Get the oil out. Now it's kind of clean in there. It's been bathed in transmission oil. The transmission oil that leaks out, you might have seen one of my other videos. I changed the transmission oil, transmission fluid, and it is still clear. It's actually hard to tell how much fluid's in there because it's so clear on the dipstick you can't, it's really difficult to tell. It's clean in there. But I would like to get this toothbrush in. Like I said, I'm on location. I did find a toothbrush that looks like it has not even been used. And I think I'll sacrifice this baby. Sort of like that. Guess it's not going to break, but I think that works anyway. I can get that in there and just clean those threads as best I can. So I think I will break this. And gosh, indestructible toothbrush. There we go. Now I can get in there and I can rotate it if I got finger strength enough. There. I'm rotating it all the way around. Can you see that? It's getting in there good, and it's pretty clean in there. Any of those threads that are failing, a lot of them came out on the bolt. Now that looks pretty darn clean. You look in there, that's about as clean as I'm going to get it. And I don't need it perfectly for J-B Weld to bind perfectly in there, because it is going to have some help from some of the threads that are still remaining in there when we put the bolt in. So it's going to be half the threads are still there. J-B Weld's going to seal up those threads so nothing leaks past the threads. It's also going to give the threads more binding ability to hold that bolt in there tight and in place. When it seals, it will be tight. And my problems will be gone, solved. So that's what we're going to do here today. Heading back up to the bench with the J-B Weld. Meet me up there. Okay, now we got to clean this part. That's going to have the J-B Weld. Now, there's a little bit of black gasket maker remaining from the last time I see that. It goes around the threads. We'll get that out of there. And that is an O-ring right there. So that's okay to leave. That's what we need in there. It's a brand new O-ring. Actually, I'm just getting rid of the gasket maker around there, because the J-B Weld is going to take that position. And I need this clean. So, the absorbent towel. And that looks pretty darn clean, doesn't it? And it needs to be dry. So we'll dry it. My new little brush, look at that. It works quite nice. Do that. There. Should have no fillings. Okay, that's that. Both surfaces are clean. As clean as I could possibly get it. Now here's the J-B Weld. This is really good. World's strongest bond, quick setting steel, reinforced epoxy master, reinforced epoxy. Strength 2,424 psi's. Force. Set time 6 minutes. So this is not the most optimal product, but we are on location. This is the product I have. It would be better not to have the fast, quick setting version of J-B Weld, but that's what I have. I get 6 minutes, so we're under the clock here, folks. Great for household repairs, automotive, plumbing, marine, crafts, and more. So automotive is what we're looking for. This is really good stuff. I really like it. It is strong. It works well. And we're going to use it here today and get back in business. So what you need to do is you need equal parts of both chemicals in here. So squeeze an equal amount of both, somewhere like that. And we don't need very much. And this will, let's get this back on here because you can use this again. There, beautiful. So now we need to mix both in equal quantities till it forms a gray substance. I can need more of the white. There, it's turning gray, and we only got 6 minutes, so we can't mess around with this. Got one try on here, then we've messed everything up. So, around we go. Now, I don't need very much, so I'm going to take a lot of that right off, sort of like that. Right there. That's pretty good. Dab off the excess. And let's screw this on. I got 6 minutes to do it. Okay, we got 6 minutes to get this in. So if we put the top in, and I got an eyeball on the bottom, it's in there. It's not in straight, but both are slightly into the holes. Now it kind of catches up against this frame here. So you got to give it a little bit of force down there. And hopefully I can pry it past that bar there. Just the way I'm going to use this to pry it in a little bit. There. Top went in. There. Top went in. Now the bottom screws in, so it's in there. It's ready to be screwed. Screw it well. And we'll see how that works out. Now I'm fighting the clock here. So I'm in here without my goggles. I recommend using goggles. And I recommend not using 6-minute J-B Weld. So you don't have to rush. So clockwise turning this, it does feel like it's screwing in. And we screw this in. We've been about a minute and a half maybe. It's still soft. I can see it going in. Screw this puppy in. Yeah. We're getting there, folks. We're getting there. You can do this. You got this. Slowly, patiently, screw that in and complete the process before 6 minutes. So that J-B Weld is getting distributed along the threads, the internal threads in this transmission. And when I stop, it's going to bind, harden and bind and lock this tube nut in place. And we're getting close. Yeah, it's working. It's getting tighter and tighter. And yeah, that feels good and tight. I think we are screwed all the way in. I don't want to over tighten it. I'll give her one more quarter turn just for luck. Oh no, she went hard. She's beautiful. She's in there tight. She's in there all the way. That's looking good. Hey folks, I'm liking this. This J-B Weld really went solid. I could feel it starting to set, so I got it tight. 6 minutes. You can do it in 6 minutes, but I'd go with the longer setting J-B Welds, like 20 minutes or so, and I'd go with that. Give you more time. It's a little tricky getting this pipe in there, but if you get both ends inserted superficially and then push them in at the same time, that's the way to go. So we got it. It's looking good. You can do this. This is not hard. It's a little finicky. There's little tricks to it, but you got this video. This will help you. You got this. Don't pay labor. You can do it yourself. I'm going back up, getting excited. I got another bolt put in, put this thing back together, take it for a test drive. Yeah. And the good thing about this fan is these fins are flexible, which is really good. Even after 10 years, they're not brittle, right? So we can work around and you can pull them out of the way. And so that's kind of nice. Come on, baby. Get on there. There we go. So this is steel going into steel, so it's not cast aluminum. So we can really tighten this puppy up. Give her. There. Good and tight. And that's beautiful. Hey, guess what? It's 3 days later, and this is leaking again. So I'll tell you what happened. I went out and I mowed for about 3 hours. At about 2 hours, I could notice the smallest little drop of a leak coming from the same area. And then, so I finished mowing, and it was leaking quite a bit. So now after 3.5 hours of mowing at full blast, so I mowed like 2.5 acres, it is leaking, and it's leaking a lot. But I found the culprit. The culprit is this bolt, 14 millimeter bolt that holds that bracket in, holds the tube, the tube that's leaking is held in place by a bracket, and this bolt holds that bracket in place. Over time, over 10 years, the vibrations have deteriorated the threads receiving this bolt. So the threads on the transmission, the cast aluminum, have become brittle, and they've broken. There's more threads on this when I pulled it out, and I cannot get this bolt tight. It's just barely finger tight, and it's not enough to hold that tube into the transmission over time. It doesn't leak to begin with, but over a few hours, the vibrations will pull that tube out. It'll leak past the new O-ring, and you'll get the leak. So there's 2 ways we can fix this, and I'll show you where it's leaking on the machine in a minute. But there's 2 options. We can get a self-tapping bolt and tap new threads into the transmission, but I don't know about cast aluminum, how well that'll work with that. I'm going to go with J-B Weld on this bolt. I'm quite sure J-B Weld can weld this bolt right into place, and it's pliable, so I think you can break it free if you ever have to get it off. I think you can, but I believe it'll be a permanent fix. I'm going to go with J-B Weld. Let's take a look. I'll show you exactly where it's leaking, so you know. Now the J-B Weld that I put on the lower part, that is not leaking. That is holding strong. So I'm going to go with the J-B Weld as well on the upper part. I'll show you. Okay, this is the tube. If you see my pointer, right there's the tube that goes into the transmission. Remember right here at this joint, that's where it's leaking. There's an O-ring in that. And what I did was I took the screwdriver. I'll show you. I took the screwdriver in here and I pried right here. Pry in like that, and I could push that in about 2 millimeters more. So it only needs to slide out 2 millimeters for that to start leaking. Now this is the bracket right here. It goes around, and there's the hole for that 14 millimeter bolt right there. Can you see that? That's the bolt that's supposed to hold this in place in here. That's the bolt that the threads are failing. That pulls out a little bit, shakes back and forth. This pulls out 2 millimeters, causes a leak that drips down here, and you may think it's a leak coming from lower down, but it's not. All right, I've cleaned up the bolt. You can see how nice and clean it is. You see the threads are not damaged here, so it's really good. This is J-B Weld. It's the same 6-minute setting time, so we got to move fast here. It shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to put that all over that thing and get a nice even coat. And that's going to help lock that in place and hold that pipe in, that tube. I pried that in as tight as it can get, and it stays by the stays nice and tight by the O-ring. You can feel it snap in place. So I think if we get this in, it'll hold it. So I get 6 minutes. There's probably now I have 5. So I'm going to move it. And there it goes. Now, there must be some threads in there because it is screwing in. It gets a little hard there. 14 millimeter. There. That's as tight as it's going to get with the current threads. We'll see if that works. Go J-B Weld. Go to work. So that's the fix. Now I'll let that sit for, let that cure for 4 to 6 hours. And tomorrow I will start mowing again. I may clean this up. And we put this back together the way we found it. Sort of like this. And the 4 bolts. And they're 14 millimeter. Everything's 14 millimeters, which is really nice. You have to keep running back and forth to your socket set. So you got that. That's J-B Weld. And we'll see. If there's no part 2, it's fixed. Whew, I'm glad I was able to get that pipe on, inserted, and screwed on in 6 minutes before that J-B Weld solidified and caught me halfway. I was able to get it done, just barely. It was fun, put a little excitement into it. Everybody needs a little excitement in their life, so that was great. Now I'm going to top up the transmission fluid because I did lose some. You guys know about this. I'm using the Kubota recommended fluid, the UDT. It's really good stuff. I wouldn't mess around with that. I got a video on doing all this maintenance stuff, so you might want to check that out if you're not familiar with it. But I'm going to top up what I believe I lost, and then check it out with the dipstick and all that. We'll get that done. Thanks for watching this video. I gotta wait 4 to 6 hours for that J-B Weld to cure. So it sets in 6 minutes, but it cures in 4 to 6 hours. So I'm gonna wait 4 to 6 hours, and I'm gonna take this baby for a mow, and I'm gonna mow and mow and mow. J-B Weld, let's see what you're worth. If you see a part 2 to this, you know the J-B Weld failed. I'm right back trying to fix it again. If you don't see a part 2, I'm good to go, and you are too. You got this. You do. $6 fix. I'm loving it.